Well, Climate Change Coalition are having a guest speaker over this week, and I've got him with me now. Paul, you're from Wales, and your position exactly, how do you describe it?
Well, I run the Zero Carbon Britain project at a place called the Centre for Alternative Technology, which is like a environmental charity.
So the whole of Britain, you're the man?
We've been modelling what it would be like to get Britain to net zero emissions since 2007, when we first launched our report in the all-party parliamentary group in Westminster.
Now, you must have a few things to say then on this whole subject. I mean, first of all, you must be amazed at how things are moving so fast now, right?
Yes, what we've seen for a decade is a yawning chasm between what science demands on one side and what the politics is talking about and offering. And now we're seeing the bridges coming across the yawning chasm as more and more people and more councils recognise this is actually an emergency situation.
So, do you know much about the Isle of Man? Do you know if we're doing enough? I mean, because obviously it's happened very quickly and that sort of thing.
I've been following, I've been researching, I'm looking with interest at the group of 15 people who are coming together with James Curran, who are going to do a report for the government here.
Will you be adding to that?
Yes, we've got a meeting with them tomorrow.
Okay, then that's what while you're here, you're talking to Tynwald members, and you got, I think, a good turnout predicted. So, are we focused, do you think, the Isle of Man, and what difference can we make?
Well, the decisions we make in the next few years will be pivotal to what's the legacy we leave for future generations. Mm-hmm. So until we see the report, until we see the action plan that the Tynwald comes up with following the report, we won't know if we're on track or not.
Mm-hmm. I suppose the Isle of Man, it's always the thing is, what can we do? You know, we're so small, and our carbon emissions really.
You can do an enormous amount here because, firstly, you're an island nation with defined borders, surrounded by an enormously viable resource of offshore wind. You've also got jurisdiction over so many things that perhaps somewhere like Telford or Yorkshire might not have.
But I'm surprised we haven't got wind farms and tidal things, and I mean, we're looking at taking oil out of the water and all sorts of things, which is not where we should be going these days, apparently. What do you have views on that?
Well, basically, we've got to watch out for stranded assets, putting assets into things that seem like a good idea now, but if we actually look at the science, we can't safely burn that. So we can't put investments from pension funds or government investments in assets that are dubious, that are very likely to be stranded. But what we see, it's an enormous drop in the price of offshore wind. I mean, it's almost halved since 2015. It's a very good investment. All of the offshore wind farms that have been built around the UK, people have been banging on the door trying to invest them.
Are you amazed we haven't got any though? I mean, is it a surprise? Or do you think in a way now we've done the right thing by waiting this long to get it at a cheaper rate?
I think now is the time to invest in them, certainly. Mm-hmm. I think the early adopters had a subsidy, but we don't need the subsidies anymore because the price has come down so much. Solar is a fabulous investment. Solar PV's come down a factor of 6. But at the same time, there's this sort of, I mean, millions of people around the world are campaigning non-violent direct action this week because they know climate change is real, they know it's serious. I mean, one of the tipping points, cultural tipping points, was Sir David King, who was the UK's chief scientist for a very long time during the climate negotiations, came out to the BBC and said, I'm scared because the extreme weather events we're seeing for this degree of warming are greater than our model predicted. So he's asking the government to bring forward the zero deadline by 10 years to 2040. Many other local authorities are looking at 2035, 2040, 2030 as targets. So we have to increase our ambition, really. But if we do it right, we can actually invest in very viable future assets that will bring good revenue streams to the Isle of Man. But we can also identify the multi-solving benefits. If we retrofit houses, we can reduce fuel poverty, we can reduce health costs because people are living in healthier buildings. Those savings, although they might accrue in a different budget, are still very important.
Besides talking to Tynwald, you've got meetings planned, I understand?
Yes.
Who are you going to be talking to?
Well, just about everybody. Citizens groups and the 15 people who are working with James Curran and the Tynwald, but I've also been doing radio interviews, I've been meeting ministers.
Are you going to keep an eye on us and keep a check on what we're doing?
I will be back, and if any way we can support this transition, Because I think because you're an island that has a higher degree of jurisdiction than many other places, you have an enormous potential to be like a live lab test bed for how we get to zero quickly. And that can bring in lots of interest from other countries. There must be many other islands around the world round about this size who could learn from the experiences of the Isle of Man as a live lab test.
How far do we go there? I mean, like you came on the boat, I think, and that sort of thing. So is that allowable, but planes won't be? I mean, how far do we on these whole things?
What we can do is, if you have big investments in offshore wind, what you have is peaks. Now, if it's our job to manage the grid, we have to deal with those peaks, else the voltage spikes and people's television sets blow.
You can't do with wind, can you?
You can deal with the peaks, and then you've got to deal with the troughs.
Oh, true. Okay, yes, that way. Yeah.
And so what you can do is you can capture the surplus energy from the peaks with electrolysis. You just electrolyse water, you create hydrogen and oxygen. It's low-level physics, really. But then that hydrogen would require an entirely different sort of infrastructure to run. But
people doing that already, or is that just science fiction still? Is that doable?
It's massive, yes.
People do that now?
There's a programme in the EU called Store and Go that have projects up to 1 megawatt. But you take the hydrogen and then you upgrade it to synthetic methane by capturing carbon dioxide from bio-waste, from sewage. CO2 plus H2 gives you CH4, which is methane, which is natural gas. But it's not a fossil fuel gas from out the ground. It's surplus energy from wind converted into a form of fuel that goes in your existing combined cycle gas turbine that you already have on the island.
Yeah.
That can go into existing gas grids. You can even make synthetic diesel fuel. You could make fuel to run the ferry from the surplus energy.
So we're not all doomed, hopefully.
No, we can do this. All the technologies are there. Every day, if you look up in the sky, invisible pound signs are flying past with the wind. If you have the nets to catch those, you can pump those pound signs into the government. The surplus you can store using your existing gas turbine. So that's not a stranded asset. And the gas industry then is brought in because we need them. It's just a different type of gas. So we're not doomed. We have an exciting future, but we have to act now and we have to act quick.